Let's do it, truth seekers, justice seekers. Hold on, I gotta fix that. The collar is not quite right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Dangerous Ideas. I'm Lee Camp, and I got loads of stuff for you today. What is that a map of? That's a map of the entire United States, which happens to be where Jill Stein's on the ballot. But we'll be getting more to that in just a few minutes. I will also be going into how the mainstream media is waking up to some of the things that I and many others have been covering about Israel for months and months. We're going to be getting to that. I'm going to save some time to yet again rip apart in a loving way the nonstop garbage free flowing out of Bill Maher's face on Israel, on Gaza. I have so much stuff for you on today's episode. So yeah, click share, click thumbs up, and all that stuff, because it all helps. It all helps a little bit. Okay, let me start off with just a few updates on what's going on in Israel. You have Palestine who just took their seat at the UN General Assembly in a historic first. Palestine was seated for the first time among UN members on September 10th during the first session of the 79th General Assembly. Permanent observer to Palestine at the UN, Riyad Mansour, was seated at a table labeled State of Palestine. Oh, you're saying it should be a state? Oh, okay. I thought it was just like a Home Depot area. I thought it was just a couple of tents and a donkey. Oh no, it actually is a state of Palestine between Sri Lanka and Sudan. That's not where it is. That's where he was seated. That would be rough if they're like, we finally gave a state to Palestine. It's between Sri Lanka and Sudan. It's you can't get there from here, honestly, but it's going to be a bit of a walk. The seating was approved by the UN General Assembly president. Quote, this is from the Egyptian ambassador. This is not merely a procedural matter. I've never been able to just like fly through the word procedural. I can do it, but I can't. It just puts a screeching halt to everything, like a speed bump in the road, procedural manner. This is a historic moment for us, said the Egyptian ambassador. Israel's representative at the UN strongly denounced the idea that the people we're genociding should get their own seat. No. Denounced the seating of Palestine among the UN member states. In May, the UN General Assembly voted overwhelmingly in favor of reconsidering Palestine's full membership. The resolution also granted Palestine with additional participation rights. Israel also condemned the vote at that time. I wonder why. Why is it Israel seems to be such a negative Nancy when it comes to Palestine? The U.S. has voted on April 18th, the Security Council resolution. Vetoed, of course. The U.S. vetoed it April 18th on the recognition of Palestine as a full member state in the UN. Thank goodness we have the United States there to help facilitate all of this ethnic cleansing. Coming after Ramallah relaunched its stalled bid for membership, which began in 2011. The resolution put forth by Algeria was widely supported, with 12 member states voting in favor. Anyway, that's big news that Palestine took their seat for the first time. Here's another update on what's going on with Israel. Canada has suspended 30 permits for arms sales to Israel. Now, we shouldn't celebrate this too much because Canada has been a big partner in this genocide. Sorry, I have a throat thing. There's something that keeps getting caught in there. Canada has been a big party to this, so we shouldn't celebrate too much, but better little than nothing and better late than nothing, I guess. Better late than never. Canada has suspended 30 permits for arms sales to Israel and canceled a contract with a U.S. company to sell Quebec-made ammunition to the Israeli army Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie. Seeing as this is Quebec, I'm going to say Jolie. I'm going to guess, as opposed to Jolly. Melanie Jolly. Will Jolie or Jolly will not allow Canadian-made ammunition, in this case manufactured by the Canadian arm of U.S.-based General Dynamics, to be sold or shipped to other countries for resale to Israel. I wonder why is it that they would stop some of these arms? Because there's a few people that maybe are having a few qualms about 40,000 people murdered. Sorry if you had to adjust your sound levels on that one, folks, but I don't know that can be said at a lower volume. And 40,000 is without counting the famine and the death and the disease that is non-bomb related, which gets up to 200,000. The sale of the Canadian arms from a go-between country for sale in Israel has been a bone of contention. Jolie said this type of business transaction, like the one by General Dynamics, is expressly forbidden. So General Dynamics is at the heart of this facilitating of Canadian arms over to Israel. As for the question regarding General Dynamics, our policy is clear, Jolie said. We will not have any form of arms or parts of arms being sent to Gaza, period. How they're being sent and where they're being sent is irrelevant. And so, therefore, my position is clear. The position of the government is clear, and we're in contact with General Dynamics. Hey, General Dynamics, stop sending Canadian arms into to help commit this genocide. And I'm going to address some of your comments here. Stolen TPS reports says more than 40,000, which is what I also, that was the addendum I added there, that it's up near 200,000 when you count famine, death, famine, disease, and of course the number that have just been killed by bombs and bullets is over 40,000 as well. It's, I think, 41,000 now. James Sharp says 185,000 according to Lancet Medical Journal. That's true. And James Sharp also points out that Ralph Nader, has been saying it's over 200,000. Nader's been saying that for a while now. Ralph Nader's actually been really great on the topic of Israel, which is good to see. All right, let's keep going here in terms of Israel's atrocities. Six more United Nations aid workers killed by Israeli strikes, and the subheading says at least 34 people, including children, killed in Gaza, as UN records highest death toll among our staff in a single incident. So it's the most UN staff killed in a single incident ever, but the number of UN staff killed was over 366 even before this event. So now we're talking over 370. And yet the UN, they ceded Palestine and stuff, but the UN's actually been pretty kind of laissez-faire on the fact that Israel keeps killing all of their employees. I feel like that should be a bone of contention. I feel like that should be something where you're like, look, it'd be awesome. We had a few issues we'd like to bring up at the weekly meeting. One is, I know you said the bathrooms weren't for UN employees, but really there's nowhere nearby. Can they please use like at least one of those bathrooms? And then the second thing was, could you stop murdering all of our employees? That would be awesome. That would just be like rad if you could stop murdering all the UN employees. And then number 3, there's not a lot of easy parking near the facility. So if you could, I'm just thinking if some of those golf carts you've been storing, like if you were to move those, that'd open up some parking as well. So yeah, those are the 3 things for the weekly meeting. If we could just get a couple of those, honestly, if we could just get the bathrooms and the stop murdering all of our staff, if we could just get that would really mean something. So I thought I'd use that as a little bit of a segue into, are there any presidential candidates that do not support genocide going on in Gaza? Yes, there are. In fact, I've interviewed 3 of them on this show: Cornel West, Claudia de la Cruz, and Jill Stein. Unfortunately, Cornel and Claudia do not have ballot access in a whole lot of the United States. However, if you look at, and I'm not doing this as a knock on them, I'm just saying these are important things to know. If you look at on the ballot, here's the map. And I know if you're listening to the podcast, you can't see this, but basically the United States is green on this map. And green means that Jill Stein is on the ballot. Dark green means the Green Party's on the ballot. And then some of these states are in light green. Light greens means there is a write-in campaign ongoing. So there are a few states that are in light green: Wyoming, North Dakota, Iowa, Illinois, Kansas, New York, and Vermont are in light green. So there are write-in campaigns going on in those areas. And then there are a couple of states where they're not on the ballot and there's no write-in campaign at this time. That's South Dakota, Oklahoma, and Indiana. And then I think I have that right, yeah. And then there are 2 states where they are taking them to court because the Democrats have successfully kept them off the ballot, at least so far. And so now they are in court proceedings trying to fight that. And those 2 states are Georgia and Nevada. I wonder why those 2 states are some of the states where the Democrats have decided to try and stop the Green Party from getting on the ballot. Oh, those are swing states where the Democrats very much don't want to have to compete with anyone. But all that being said, there's actually someone who's anti-genocide who's on the ballot in almost the entirety of the United States. And by the way, it takes 270 electoral votes to win, and the Greens are on the ballot. I don't mean write-in candidate or any of that stuff. I mean, they are absolutely on the ballot with 421 electoral votes if you count all of the places they're on the ballot. Now, I am not doing PR for the Green Party, even though I am a big fan of a lot of their work. And so therefore I will make this concession. I will tell you this. I will be forthright with you. Jill Stein will not win this election. We know that this is a 2-party system that is owned by these corporate, totalitarian, disgusting shit show. We understand that. But there is a lot that can be done in a candidacy that is not just, at the end of the day, who's in the Oval Office. Both getting issues forward, which the Green Party has gotten a lot of issues forward that are ultimately grow in the nation's mind, such as Medicare for all. That was a Green Party idea that now is on the tip of everyone's tongue. So that type of thing can be created by a successful campaign. And I mean successful outside of just winning the presidency. And then on top of that, if they get 5%, then they they're guaranteed ballot access in the future and things like that. So there are other reasons to support this. But for me, it's more about a war of ideas. This is a war of ideas against those who support corporate totalitarianism, who support endless war, who support the endless destruction of Palestinians and Gazans. And there's so many issues, of course, and I don't need to list them all. Hopefully a lot of you know them. There's so many issues. And so I just wanted to highlight to you, take a moment right here to highlight to you that Jill Stein and the Green Party are on the ballot in the vast majority of the country, almost the entirety of the country. And so this whole idea about like, oh, let's just ignore them. Let's answer a couple of questions here. Sir Edward Ross is asking if Stein is not on the ballot, can you still write her in? Yes, you can. Some states will do this disgusting thing where they'll act like every last little thing has to be right, has to be correct on a write-in candidacy in order for it to be accepted. So like if you were to spell Stein wrong, like IE instead of EI, they wouldn't count that. If you were to put 3 extra L's in Jill because you were just like having a lot of fun, they wouldn't count that. If you like, sometimes if the letter comes out of the box or something, like you got a little swoop on your J, they won't count that. And of course, this is all an effort to subvert democracy at every level. This is an effort to subvert subvert any kind of democracy. Robin Ryan says, Open Secrets rundown on General Dynamics, $32.5 million in campaign contributions, $263 million in lobbying for all cycles covered, starting in 1998, Robin thinks. Yeah. Oh, first of all, Open Secrets does great work. And yeah, General Dynamics dumps millions of dollars into these elections. And guess what? They generally fund both sides. I don't know which side they fund a little more. Often these companies will fund, these corporations will fund, one side a little more. It's usually the side that they think they might have a little more trouble winning over. So they might give, slightly more to Democrats because they think Democrats are slightly more likely to cut them out of the weapons contractor loop or something. Some of that goes on. But in general, they're funding both sides so that they will have a huge ability to manipulate both sides. And that's how it works. Thank you guys for those comments. Excellent comments. All right. So let's get to how some of the mainstream media, keyword some, but some of the mainstream media is now starting to come around on the things you and I have been saying for months and months. We'll start about Israel. We'll start off, and actually one I got later about China, but we'll start off with the Hannibal Directive. Now, if you're a regular viewer of my show, then you know I discuss the Hannibal Directive regularly. Within like a month or two of October 7th, we knew that the IDF had used the Hannibal Directive. Hannibal Directive basically says that if someone is taken hostage, then the military, the Israeli authorities will kill the hostages, the hostage takers, and basically anyone nearby. All of the above. It's just a free-for-all of murder. That's what it is. I'm sure they use more words, but it could basically say Hannibal Directive equals free-for-all of murder. And we knew this. We brought it. I brought it to you. Other independent media brought it to you. And it's been widely documented. There are even a couple of newspapers in Israel that have admitted it, including Haaretz, even though Haaretz initially claimed it was a conspiracy theory or something, but they eventually came around. But now you even have some mainstream media outside of just Israel that are admitting this. Here's from Consortium News. They do great work. And they're talking about an Australia's national broadcaster, ABC. And yes, it is confusing because there's ABC in the United States, but this is ABC in Australia. And it is like the biggest news network in Australia. They featured a story reporting that the IDF had indeed carried out the Hannibal Directive, killing untold numbers of Israeli civilians on October 7th. And of course, when they cover this, they act like it's breaking news. We have uncovered that the IDF, and if you're like me and you see a report like that, you're yelling at your TV screen. We knew it for months. We've been covering this for months. And here they are like, apparently something called the Hannibal Directive. That's my Australian accent. No, that's my Walter Cronkite. I don't. If someone wants to attempt the Walter Cronkite in Australian accent, the Hannibal Directive. Good day, mate. There, nailed it. But I also brought you a clip like a month or two ago, probably two months ago, of Piers Morgan. Like, who was it? Was it Low Key or? I can't remember if it was Low Key or George Galloway. Someone brought up the Hannibal Directive on Piers Morgan. This is like a month ago. And Piers Morgan goes, I've never heard of that. I don't know what that is. And it's like, have you been reading any of the things that isn't mainstream media? You've never heard the term Hannibal Directive? Ridiculous. Okay, so to continue, though, he says in the Consortium News article, they regurgitated several reports in Israeli media dating back as far as January, which revealed the use of the doctrine interpreted as a license to kill Israeli soldiers being taken hostage by the enemy, but also apparently killing not just Israeli soldiers, but civilians that are not soldiers. And then he points out that their delay in covering the Hannibal Directive, their delay is facilitating genocide. Like, the delay is part of making sure this can continue. And he says the story should be viewed as an example of establishment media's propensity for begrudgingly giving a nod to demonstrable facts only when needed, like long after it would have been pivotal in the story, in the propaganda, in the reality, because the lie becomes the reality. That's the biggest problem here. The lie becomes the reality if it is told well enough and long enough. The lie becomes the reality. For a lot of Americans, for example, Russiagate is fact. Like, Russiagate actually happened. For a lot of Americans, they sit there thinking it's real because they've just heard that lie enough over long enough that it becomes true to them. And this also goes, I'm not saying that just to like defend Trump. This also goes for a lot of things Trump says to his supporters. They just start to believe it. Some of them believe that, that Kamala Harris is a Marxist, that a far-right lunatic, pro-war lunatic is a Marxist. Like, they've just heard that term said enough that they believe it. And so the lie becomes the truth. The article continues, the belated reporting of Israel's use of the Hannibal Directive 11 months into a genocide reveals a qualitative difference between a passive and subservient mainstream media. They are bootlickers. That's what our mainstream media does best. Here's the thing. If you ever get the chance to get laid by a mainstream media personality, I bet they're good at certain parts of it because they have been doing some serious bootlicking. So I imagine the tongues are strong. Anyway, an active and vital independent journalism earnestly working in the public interest and in accord with the Genocide Convention, a UN legal instrument that demands states take steps to stop genocide from occurring. So the difference, he's saying there's a difference between the passive and subservient mainstream media and what is actually required by law. Technically, there is international law saying these mainstream media outlets are required to help stop genocide. So they're breaking international law. Now, of course, that doesn't mean anything to them because that's what the U.S. does. It's what U.S. media does, it's what U.S. government does, etc. Okay, let me bring you, though, another. Oh, wait, hold on. It was more from this article I wanted to read. The ABC story avoided. What the ABC story did was avoid pointing out that Israel falsely blamed Hamas for killing 1,400 civilians. Initially, they said 1,400. That was the original inflated figure. Then they revised it down to 1,200 as part of a disinformation campaign. That figure of 1,200 killed solely by Hamas is still routinely reported. The lie becomes the fact. It's routinely reported as fact. Kamala Harris mentioned that lie. She didn't call it a lie, right? She called it the truth in her debate the other night. She said Hamas brutally killed 1,200. We know for fact, and like I'm saying, it's been reported by mainstream media to some degree, by Israeli media. We know for fact Hamas did not kill 1,200. Hamas killed a portion of that 1,200. We may never know how much. Hamas did kill a certain number, but we may never know how much. We also know that of that 1,200, something like 600, 700 were IDF, were active, or other Israeli authorities, security services. So anyway, the numbers get cagey, but we know for a fact it's not 1,200 that Hamas killed. Other elements of this propaganda included false accounts of dozens of babies beheaded or ripped out of the womb, cooked alive in ovens, systematic rape, and horrific disfigurement of women by resistance fighters. All of that has been disproven completely. These stories, devised by Israeli military and political figures and laundered by mainstream media, helped whip up an orgy of hate and revenge and frenzied support within Israeli society for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's biblical injunction to commit genocide against an occupied population under siege. Okay, so let me bring you another example of mainstream media finally caving and revealing some little bits of the truth about what's going on in Israel, what Israel's involved in. Here is ABC News, and I'm not going to play their video because I don't want to give them the satisfaction. We know that if I played that video, they would be smiling because they all watch my show. But I'll just tell you about the title. You know what's going on here. Rotten to the core. Inside the Israeli and IDF system of incarcerating Palestinians. Rotten to the core. Now, we've known for months and months. Sorry, mic problems. Okay. The day of October 7th, we already knew that Israel had 5,000 Palestinian hostages. That was the number before October 7th. 5,000 Palestinian hostages, roughly. People that are completely innocent that they've thrown into the... You guys can hear me now, right? That they've thrown into the prisons. And we knew that. And it hasn't been covered at all by your mainstream media. And then here we have finally, just the other day, September 4th, ABC covering inside the Israeli and IDF system of incarcerating Palestinians. So major revelation for the mainstream media. These kind of things. It only took them 11 months, but they were like, what? I don't think these Palestinians are treated very well when they're in the prisons in Israel. But very exciting that you even get this little bit of coverage. Okay, I want to come back to some of this stuff, but I want to jump to, well, actually, after I answer a couple of questions, I want to jump to breaking news about the Uhuru trial. But let me just see a couple of comments. The Revolution Continues blog says MAPAC. What is MAPAC? Oh, there you tell me. Muslim Action Political Action Committee. Muslim Action Political Action Committee. They got action in there twice. Come on, Muslim American. It must be. I was like, wow, these got really into action. Let's see, Action Muslim Action Political Action Committee. Action E. Anyway. The Muslim American Political Action Committee has endorsed Jill Stein for president. That is big news. Also, Revolution Continues blog says Jill leads Harris by a shit ton of percentage points in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Arizona. I don't know if that's true. I would have to see evidence of that. I don't know that she leads Harris. I think she is polling. I think Stein is polling very well in the places you listed, but I don't know if she's beating Harris. But let's see what else we got. Mo says, what's up? Mick Norton says the satellite video of the massacre probably got shredded along with the cars and the people's parts in the cars. Yeah, Mick Norton is referring to the cars mainly at the Nova Music Festival, although there were cars elsewhere. But on October 7th, that were completely obliterated. I mean, they were shot to hell, thousands of rounds of ammunition shot through them, and they were shredded and buried in an undisclosed location. Israel admitted that they shredded and buried. They said to respect the dead, but in fact, it was because they didn't want everyone to see that all the bullet holes are in the top coming downward, which is, guess what? Helicopters. It's not Palestinian fighters on the ground. Sabby Sabs, what up? Is that the real Sabby Sabs in the chat? Sabby Sabs says Jill just endorsed by the Muslim Public Affairs Committee. Yes, that is something we just mentioned. Thank you, Sabby. But okay, let me. Sherry is asking, where am I next to protest? I am going to make it to the October 5th. Sadly, 1 year of that will be happening in Washington, D.C. That'll be, I think, October 5th it's a Saturday in Washington, D.C., and I will be there. I I'll have more details on this stuff tomorrow, but I also will be at a Assange kind of Julian Assange kind of celebration of his freedom event. I will be speaking along with many other awesome people, Eleanor Goldfield, Medea Benjamin. That will be in Washington, D.C. as well. But that's coming up, I think, September 28th. Anyway, details tomorrow. Also, as Fire just told me today, I need to update my schedule on my website. I'm going to work on that as well. Okay, let's jump to this update, which kind of infuriates me about the Uhuru trial, the Uhuru 3. I've brought you information about them before. They're on trial right now. These are Americans. These are Americans in America trying to exercise their free speech, and they're on trial for being Russian agents. The verdict has just come down, and they were found guilty of conspiracy, but not guilty of acting as Russian agents, which I don't quite get how you could have one without the other, because weren't they indicted of having a conspiracy to be Russian agents? The Uhurus said their support of Russia was free speech, which it was. Federal jury said it was a crime. After a week-long trial that touched on complicated issues, they're not that complicated, national security, foreign relations. They love to do that whenever they're prosecuting someone for something they shouldn't be prosecuted for. It's so complicated. I can't get my brain to work on the things. And so I guess the answer, if it hurts my brain, is just to lock them in prison for a long time. It's kind of like they say, the what's going on in Gaza is it's complicated. Oh, my brain hurts on figuring out Gaza, Israel, so I guess we just commit genocide. I guess that's the way to go, because my brain hurts. It's the dumbest. Don't ever use the word complicated, you assholes. Anyway, a panel on eight men and 4 women. By the way, I will also get to the point that they managed to get the only black juror off the jury. So this is all white, finding against a black movement. The jury found the group not guilty of more serious charge of active agents of a foreign government. I don't quite understand how you could have a conspiracy, but not to do the thing they're accusing you of. But let me also, so they were just found guilty of part of it. But let me bring you some more. Just the other day, I brought to you how insane this trial is. Literally, they are putting up experts who know nothing about the trial. Anyway, here's some more information about what just went on in the trial. This is how they got the only black juror removed. Now, the prosecution got kind of lucky in that the only black juror on the jury was running late. He or she was running late. And the judge said that if the juror was absent for 30 more minutes, then they would be removed. Oh, it's a she. She would be removed from the jury. The attorney raised the fact that the missing juror was the only African on the jury. He asked the judge to replace her with the sole African. I think they mean African American, but they're probably not using that term intentionally. Anyway, sole African juror in the pool of alternates who had been seated in the jury box throughout the trial. So, as you know, in a jury, there's 12 main ones, and then there are alternates. The alternates don't vote in what ultimately happens unless they replace someone who gets taken out. Now, if the only African American is pulled out of the jury, it would make sense to have at least one on the goddamn jury when it's a trial about whether black people, I mean, I think one of them is not black, but this is largely an African-American group. And on top of that, it's called the African People's Socialist Party or whatever. I always get it wrong, but it would make sense to have one black person on the jury. Didn't that seem kind of fair? But the judge refused and put a white juror in that spot. So you ended up with a 12-person white jury deciding this case. But here is a fun moment in the trial. They were talking to the lead investigator and the FBI's star witness. That's who they're grilling, is the FBI investigator, lead investigator. The Uhuru 3 attorney says, do you have any evidence of Russian interference in the 2017 St. Petersburg, Florida mayoral campaign of Jesse Neville. So Jesse Neville's one of the Uhuru Three. He ran for mayor in St. Petersburg, Florida. He did not win, but they claimed in the indictment that Russia was basically running his campaign, like trying to get him to win. Because, Russia's really concerned about what goes on in St. Petersburg, Florida. I mean, it's so insane on its face. It's like, why the fuck would Russia care what happens for the mayor of St. Petersburg? What is he going to... Oh, everybody has to drink vodka. Mandate coming down in St. Petersburg. Everybody's got... I don't care how hot it is. Everybody's got to wear furry hats. New mandate in St. Petersburg. Why would Russia care? It's so dumb. So dumb. But anyway, the attorney asked the star witness, the lead investigator, do you have any evidence of Russian interference in that mayoral campaign? FBI man says, no. Okay. Uhuru 3 attorney says, why was the accusation included in the indictment? Good question. FBI man says, I didn't write the indictment. Uhuru 3 attorney says, when you were in discussions with the DOJ about the indictments, you were aware that there was no evidence of Russian interference in Jesse Neville's electoral campaign. FBI man, yes, I was aware of that. Uhuru 3 attorney. So a press release was issued saying that the Russian government was interfering in U.S. elections through Jesse Neville's campaign while you knew there was absolutely no evidence of that. FBI man, yes. We allowed these indictments to come down while I knew there was zero evidence of that. And he admitted this on the stand. And then they still get convicted of conspiracy. But they didn't get convicted of being Russian agents, just conspiracy. Uhuru 3 attorney Aide Griffin presented documents and videos demonstrating the consistency of the views and the work of the African People's Socialist Party spanning over 50 years. They've had the same views for 50 years. And yet, suddenly, Russia must be telling them to say these things. Oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's kind of like the accusations against me. When Russia must be directing you. That's interesting because I've had these same views and been doing the same shit online. You can go watch it. I looked a little more young and a young whippersnapper back then, but you can go watch stuff from 12, 15 years ago, me saying the same shit. The DOJ prosecutors repeated their baseless accusations that the Uhuru 3 have been secret agents in the Russian government conspiracy to sow discord and interfere in the elections. Again, how is it they found them guilty of conspiracy without guilty of the Russian agent part? Because then it's a conspiracy to what? Like, they don't both have to come together. They show the jurors diagrams to illustrate their story. They reviewed the same email and WhatsApp communication shown earlier in the trial and painted a picture of Russian interference reminiscent of the Cold War. In her closing argument, Attorney Griffin accused the DOJ and FBI of being the only conspirators in the room, having conducted criminal activity by holding a press conference and issuing an indictment that accused Jesse Neville of inviting Russian interference in his mayoral campaign, and then yesterday admitting they knew they had no evidence whatsoever to back it up. And yet these folks were just convicted of conspiracy, but not acting as Russian agents. Isn't this a little like when they try and convict someone? Isn't this a little like someone when they try and convict someone of resisting arrest, but they admit they had no reason to arrest them? Well, he was resisting arrest. Well, why were you arresting him? Well, because he was standing there. Well, so what were you charging him with? What was your suspicion? Well, he was resisting arrest. But why were you arresting him? Well, because he was resisting arrest. That's why I was arresting him. It's because he was resisting arrest. This seems very similar to say, oh, we can't prove they're Russian agents, but there was a conspiracy to be Russian agents. But no, there was no acting as Russian agents. The fuck? Anyway, I don't know. I guess we'll hear soon what kind of sentence these activists are given. This is just a crushing for free speech in America. That's what this is. Just absolute destruction of free speech. Thank you all so much for being here. Please hit share, hit like, all of those good things. I have a lot more stories coming up for you, as well as I'm going to rip apart more of Bill Maher's absolute verbal diarrhea. I also have a special segment today for members. I noticed there's not been a single super chat thrown in here, which, if you guys are trying to tell me something, you just don't love me. I get it. I don't care. I don't even care anymore. Whatever. I don't care. I don't care. Let's jump to something that impacts us all: grocery prices, real quick. Although, let me answer respond to some of your chats real quick. Larry Graham says, I never missed your show on RT. One of the only places you could hear the truth. Love your work. I love you, Larry Graham. Thank you. Yeah, Mick Norton said the exact same thing I did. Why would Russia want to influence the St. Petersburg mayor? Like, what control does the St. Petersburg mayor have that would be important to Russia? 4X Gold says, did anyone ask why the black juror was late? I mean, maybe someone got to her. It's quite possible that there was some pressure on her. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, JCR is telling me that YouTube has banned Electronic Intifada. Is that permanent or is that a suspension? I mean, either one's horrible, but I'm wondering whether that's permanent or a suspension. Well, if that's, assuming that's true, we should all fight to get them unbanned. Sometimes pressure on YouTube actually works. Electronic Intifada, for those of you who don't know, does amazing work on Israel, what Israel's doing, just great journalism. They led the way on the Hannibal Directive. They led the way on the ridiculous fake rape allegations. They led the way on all that stuff, and they've done amazing work. I had one person from Electronic Intifada. I had Nora on an interview on here. So, and for those of you that think the name Electronic Intifada sounds scary, Intifada just translates to revolution. So if you think the term electronic revolution sounds scary, then I can't help you. Matthew Morey says we live in a mafioso government. It is quickly starting to seem that way. Mo says free speech is gone in America. Hey, some of you threw in some super chats. Thank you. Stolen TPS report. Baron Saturday. Thank you. Wow, Landrew. Giant donation. Love you. You're the best. You're the best. Thank you so much. Miss Chewy. Miss Chewy says, thank you. You guys are being too kind, really. Cherie, thank you so much. Sir Edward Ross says, shout out from Zimbabwe. Wow, we got to Zimbabwe. That rocks. Herney Hill, thank you, Herney. You're the best. Fine. I really hope I'm pronouncing your name right, because I would feel. See, I'm fine with pronouncing your name wrong once, but if I do it regularly, that's pretty shitty. Like if I did it once, it's I was trying, but if I'm doing it all the time, that really sucks. Thank you all. You guys rock. Deebs270 is saying, how do we put pressure on YouTube? Yes, they are faceless. Yes, you're absolutely right. One of the best ways, honestly, is still Twitter, because they do, like, there's various YouTube Twitter accounts. There's a regular one, and then there's like one for the creator content. Or like, I don't know them, but you can look them up and find them. And by tweeting at them, those things they often see, because there aren't like millions of people tweeting at them about wrongful suspensions. There's probably only a few. So they tend to see pressure on Twitter. Outside of Twitter, I don't actually know how you pressure YouTube, honestly. Okay. Let's get to something we all care about before I tear Bill Maher limb from limb. I can't with Bill Maher. What is your goddamn problem? But Liberation News has an article on grocery prices shooting up, and Here's something that could make them shoot up even more. Are you worried about food prices? If so, you are not alone. Some 70% of consumers are extremely or very concerned about the cost of food at grocery stores. Oh, you mean just because like a piece of broccoli went from $1 to $17 over the past couple of years? You mean because it's cheaper to buy a McDonald's hamburger than to get a box of organic crackers or something? Yeah. I think people are concerned. The pending $25 billion merger of the Kroger and Albertsons grocery store chains threatens to continue the trend of monopolistic price gouging. The trend of monopolistic price gouging, while leading to the sell-off and possible closure of hundreds of neighborhood stores. Federal regulators, attorneys general from 9 states, from 9 states, and the Grocery Workers Union are in court opposing the merger. The merger between the two biggest grocery chains with 710,000 workers between them has been in the works since 2022. Kroger and Albertsons say they need to merge to remain competitive against other monopolistic companies, Walmart and Amazon. Isn't it funny how the argument, because this is what capitalism is, right? Slowly, a lot of different people in the marketplace, companies in the marketplace slowly get bought up and merge into one giant blob that just shits over everything. That's what capitalism is. But you notice their argument as to why they need to merge into a blob is to fight the other companies that have managed to put out of business all of the people that they didn't merge in with their blob. So it's like, basically they're saying, we need to violate antitrust stuff and create a monopoly in order to fight the other monopoly entities. Isn't capitalism beautiful? And it's like Luke Skywalker saying, I gotta kill a lot of innocent civilians to fight Darth Vader because he kills innocent civilians. So it's what he does, you know. But it's just a giant blob of grossness. Anyway, if the merger goes through, the new entity would control 13% of the national grocery market. According to Supermarket News, I didn't know there was a Supermarket News. That sounds like the most boring magazine ever. Do they have a centerfold? Is there a Supermarket News centerfold? I sure hope so. I didn't, for anyone thinking that's sexist, I didn't say it was a woman. Could be a male centerfold in Supermarket News. In fact, all of you who thought it was a woman, you shouldn't be so sexist, okay? According to Supermarket News, the two chains combined control 57% of the market in Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming. But in their defense, there are only 2 stores in Wyoming, like of anything, because there's only 8 people. The Federal Trade Commission would require that 579 stores in cities where the two chains overlap be sold off, which owns the be sold off to C&S, which owns the Piggly Wiggly chain, in order to keep the merged company from having too great a share of market. So basically, this is them just screwing us even more. And again, it's like, could it be true that they need to merge in order to remain competitive with Amazon and Walmart? It could be, but guess what? Amazon and Walmart shouldn't be that big. They should be broken up. But again, and look, sometimes it happens. Sometimes they actually succeed in breaking up these things. Sometimes they say, oh, there's too much monopoly, and it actually is broken up. But first of all, that's the exception that proves the rule. Secondly, this is like, it's them saying, hey, the only way capitalism can continue without every grocery store being owned by one entity, the only way capitalism could continue is if we interrupt capitalism and basically try and stop the gravity as it exploits everything. Stop the gravity that is destroying lives and raising prices and making everyone miserable, and rather than living in a post-scarcity world where we'd all have enough and none of us would fear for whether we're going to lose our job and get kicked out of our house tomorrow or our apartment or what have you. But this is like, Oh, hey, we need to chain down one little baby toe of capitalism so that people can continue to actually afford a grocery now and again. Despite Kroger's assurances, the merger will likely further fuel price gouging. Fuel price gouging? The FTC is, I mean, I guess food is kind of fuel. The FTC is currently holding hearings in court to decide if the merger should be, will likely further fuel price gouging. I just put the pause in the wrong place, and then I was like, why is Kroger selling fuel? Sorry. Further fuel price gouging. Hearings in court to decide if the merger should be blocked. While testifying to the FTC, the attorney, Kroger's senior director for pricing, Andy Groff, admitted Kroger had price gouged. So he had to admit, hey, stolen TPS reports. Just became a YouTube member. Thank you. So he had to admit they had price gouged. And in an internal email he had written, on milk and eggs, retail inflation has been significantly higher than cost inflation. Basically, we're inflating prices even though it's not costing us that much, which is an admission of price gouging. A report by the FTC in March showed that the grocery industry as a whole had increased prices far beyond any increases in their own costs. So for any of you out there who have been under the impression that the reason your grocery prices are going up is because that the companies need to spend more to get the food to you, and it's just tougher for them, so they've had to pass the cost on to you. No, they are increasing the prices even while their costs are not going up. They are continuing to screw you. Has increased prices far beyond any increases in their costs. The report stated some firms seem to have used rising costs as an opportunity to further hike prices to increase their profits, and profits remain elevated even as supply chain pressures have eased. United Food and Commercial Workers, which represents grocery workers, opposes the merger. So the union is opposed to it. Because generally when these big companies merge and get even bigger, they screw workers even more. So that's part of it. Let's see what you guys are saying as well. Matthew Morey says it's not because 100 out of 195 nations have dropped the U.S. petrodollar for oil trade, is it? Referring to my mistake on fuel costs. But yes, there is, as many of you know, many countries are dropping the petrodollar. Blue Moon says, thanks, Lee. You seem to be one of the few to remain consistent. So many lemmings just riding the RFK train. I understand kind of why people got behind RFK when he was a third party candidate, or when he was running against the Democrats, because some of the things he says make a lot of sense. And so I understood that. But when he spins around and says, "Oh yeah, vote for Trump," I'm like, why would you then follow that? That's just garbage. Like, why? Even if you got kind of tricked into liking him before, why would you follow that? And again, I do understand why people followed him when he wasn't saying vote Trump. But anyway. Kurt Boss says monopolies are a crime. David Nathan says our slaves are revolting against U.S. hegemony. Bananas cost $6 a pound without our imposed slavery. Well, the other thing, and I don't know, you guys can weigh in on this as well, is if you want to not have the most toxic kinds of food, I mean, it's crazy expensive. Like, it's expensive enough to go to the grocery store. Just regular products at the grocery store, whatever. It's gotten very expensive. But then if you're one of these crazy people who's like, I'd really like for my kid to eat organic, or I really prefer to eat, or, vegetables without pesticide. Like, the idea that it should, those costs are nuts, like nuts. To try and afford groceries that are like organic and fresh, fuck locally sourced, of course not. But just organic is like so tough, or anti or non-GMO or whatever. But the idea that like to not poison yourself costs that much more is what a dystopian shitfest that is. It's like, would you like to eat the poison? Okay, that's $2. If you don't want the poison, that's $14. Yeah. So you have to, in order to not poison yourself, you have to have a whole different job, like a whole new career. You gotta, if you want to not eat the poison, you gotta go back to school. Okay, you gotta, because you studied like humanities, and that is not gonna pay for not poisoning yourself. You need to go back and get a business degree or law school. Okay, because listen, you studied flute, so. Listen, if you didn't want to be poisoned, you should have thought about that when you were getting 50 credits on the triangle, getting 50 credits on drawing the human body. Yeah. Did you really think that was going to pay for you not to be poisoned? Of course not. What, are you out of your mind? Thank you, Michael, for the donation. Thank you. And even if you guys aren't watching, for those of you who aren't watching it live, you can also throw in a couple bucks just by clicking the little like heart $sign thing or whatever if you want. But I will say this. I'm about to get to, in a few minutes, I'm going to get to tearing apart Bill Maher. Then I'm going to do an extra segment, an extra comedy segment for you guys over on my locals page, leecamp.net. For those of you who would like to see the extra comedy segment, which I'll give you a hint is about American schooling, our schools. For those of you who want to see that extra comedy segment, just go over to leecamp.net and scroll down to become a subscriber. It's $6 a month, and you get to support this show, which would be awesome. So that's like 38 cents an episode, and it would be amazing. And yeah, thank you, Tony, for the donation. Tony says, I have a new male hygiene deodorant spray. It's called Umpire, and it's for foul balls. Keep laughing. I don't know whether you're telling the truth or not, but I like it. If that's real, I would love it. Like, Tony, you need to patent that immediately. If that was only a joke and you don't have 100 cases of those ready to ship, then you're in trouble, because people are going to be looking up your email and they're going to want their Umpire deodorant for foul balls. Okay. Okay. I'm just going to let's go to Bill Maher. Let's do it. I can't get to everything, so I gotta do this now. But this is Bill Maher talking to Henry Winkler, the Fonz. And as many of you know, Bill Maher is, if you listen to him and actually analyze what he's saying, he could be a Fox News correspondent. He calls himself liberal, but all that means is that he says vote Harris or Biden instead of Trump. On most of the issues he brings up, it could be a Fox News segment. You will not hear any difference. Now, that being said, there's also no difference between the Democrats and the Republicans, hence Bill Maher. So here he is talking to Henry Winkler and talking about Gaza, where Bill Maher is just an absolute piece of human garbage.
Allowed to talk about that?
Of course, you can talk about anything. That's what I love about this.
I really think that he knows if God.
He when he says he means Netanyahu. Sorry, I cut out that part. Henry Winkler says Netanyahu knows.
God forbid he steps down or the war is over, he's in jail.
I mean, that's possible, and we hear that a lot. I mean, it's interesting.
Anything Bill Maher, like if he kind of knows it's true, but he doesn't want to talk about it or doesn't want to admit it, or it looks bad for Israel, he just glosses over it and goes like, yeah, we've heard that. He did the same thing when I was tearing apart something else he did. When I did something else, when I covered something else he covered, or he talked about, he did the same thing when someone brought up, like Bill Burr said, I don't think children should be bombed. And Bill Maher goes, "Oh, we care about the children, of course. We hear that a lot." And then he moves on, and you're like, "No, no, 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 no! You sit in that. You stop and think about it and sit in it." Anyway, here he is doing it again. Like, a lot of people say that Yahoo.
Leave it to my core.
Yeah. Well, you don't know what's, I mean, that could be the case. You don't know what's in a person's heart. Whether
You don't know what's in a person's heart. Like, this is a guy who does nothing but analyze political figures and what they believe and why they believe it all day long. But then he's confronted with the fact that Netanyahu absolutely wants this genocide to continue in order to stay in office, because if he doesn't, he'll go into jail. I mean, that's one of the many reasons that he's doing this genocide. But and so he's confronted with it, and he goes, "You don't know what's in a person's heart. You don't know how they're feeling." How many times do you think Bill Maher has talked about what Donald Trump believes, or what Joe Biden believes, or what Mitch McConnell believes in his head constantly? That's his career, much like it's my career. It's his entire career. But here he is going, "You don't know what's in his heart."
that's true or not, you can still be supportive of the decisions he's making, which I am.
Okay.
It's very.
That's right. Bill Maher is supportive of Netanyahu's decisions, which means Bill Maher is, at least publicly, the Democrats have not, Biden has not done anything to stop this genocide. He's not done anything to stop Netanyahu other than just publicly say it's wrong. But publicly, Bill Maher is to the right of this talking points of Joe Biden, Harris, the State Department. Like, even our genocidal government has said, like, Netanyahu should slow down or back off or whatever. Now, of course, they could stop him at any minute, and they don't. They could cut off weapon shipments at any moment, and they won't. But here's Bill Maher being to the right of those lunatics. I mean, what a piece of shit.
Very naive, I think, that this could go any other way.
Right.
And any other country.
It's naive to think that we could do anything else other than ethnically cleanse Gaza. How morally bankrupt do you have to be to say that out loud? Not just out loud, but to an audience of thousands, if not millions, to say it's naive to think that we meaning Israel, could not genocide. That's disgusting. That's actually a horrible admission. Yeah, no, we just have to. It's just in our hearts. It's just in our souls.
In the world would not be expected to act any differently.
Absolutely not true. It is true that perhaps any nation would be expected to respond if October 7th happened to them, but not any nation would commit genocide, would murder over 40,000 in 11 months, would kill more journalists. And in fact, you know how we know that is because we can look at other conflicts. We can look at Vietnam. We can look at World War II and see that Israel has done worse on certain things. In terms of murdering journalists, Israel's worse. In terms of murdering doctors, Israel's worse. In terms of murdering UN staff, Israel's worse. So every nation does not act like this. He's absolutely full of shit.
If you get attacked, you get to fight back.
I think he was about to say genocide. You get to just murder everyone. You get to murder all the children, whatever. No, you don't, Bill. That's not how that works. I'm sorry. That's not how that works morally. It's not how it works under international law. It's not how it works under most national laws. It's not how it works. It doesn't matter if you get attacked. You do not get to then just murder all of the children you can find. Not how it works.
And the war doesn't end when you start fighting back, which they always want with Israel.
He's so sick.
You know, when somebody...
You know what? A lot of what you're saying is true. However,
No, not all of it. In fact, not any of it. And see, here's the thing: is Henry Winkler. I think he's like, if you listen to interviews with him, he's kind of a soft-spoken, kind of sweet guy, and I think he's not really capable of arguing with a belligerent blowhard like Bill Maher. So he's like, a lot of what you're saying is true. No, none of it's true.
Think that there are parents, there are families that are hurting because the hostages are not.
Yes, and it's the
primary.
job of a statesman.
Because he said families are hurting because the hostages are not primary. Now, he, as with Bill Maher, whenever they say hostages, they only refer to Israeli hostages being held. Hostages never apparently applies to the 10,000 Palestinian hostages being held by Israel. So we're only supposed to care about Israel hostages because here's the thing, and I've tried to stress this. Israeli people are actual humans, whereas Palestinians are not. So Israeli peoples, when they're taken hostage, that's something we should care about. Palestinians, no, because they're not human, right? They're another thing. They're just not human. So you only need to care about Israelis.
And a leader and a prime minister to think long term and not just short term.
So apparently it's the job of a prime minister or a leader or whatever to think long term. And when that means committing genocide, it's fine. As long as you're thinking down the road. As long as, and this goes for, it's funny, it goes for both countries and it goes for like neighborhoods. Like if I think, here in my neighborhood, that there's a chance, that I'm going to get in a fight with one of my neighbors down the street. And I don't know which one, but there's a chance, you over years, if you live in the same spot, you eventually have a disagreement and it could be bad. And so to defend myself, I get to just genocide the block because I'm leading my household and I'm thinking long term. And so long term, rather than worry about whether I could end up in a fight, someone could rob me, someone could rob me who lives in the neighborhood. And so rather than like thinking long term, I should just genocide the block, just ethnically cleanse the block. And so I'm going to get started on that. So cool.
Like if they don't eliminate Hamas, then
they're not going to eliminate Hamas. Hamas is an idea, not a group of people.
That's a bullshit thing.
It's not bullshit.
Well,
not bullshit at all.
Oh, let me tell you something. They've said that for years. I just read, I think, Sam Harris on this, and
Sam Harris is the biggest garbage human being who perhaps has ever lived. I mean, he's got a bit of a fight going on with Bill Maher as to who is the most garbage human being. But I have done multiple videos tearing apart Sam Harris and his absolute shit stain arguments.
He said it right.
I know Sam.
Okay, great.
I like
love
Sam.
Great. I'm
Yeah.
glad.
Why do they know and like Sam? I mean, I know why Bill Maher is. Bill Maher does, but no one should know and like Sam Harris. There should be zero. His family members should not know and like him.
We both do.
Yeah.
And he said this thing we've heard a lot of times, you can't kill an idea. He said, well, we did after World War II.
No, we didn't. There are still Nazis around. Now, did we win a battle after World War II? Yes. But no, we didn't. Those garbage ideas, those absolute shit ideas that existed in World War still exist. Existed in World War II. And so, yeah, this is a dumb argument.
Until now.
We did kill a lot of...
And Henry Winkler throws in these great little lines to refute what Bill Maher is saying, but they get like glazed over because Bill Maher just ignores them. But when Henry Winkler says until now, I think he's referring to the rise of like neo-Nazism and shit. And yeah, they're not gone.
Japanese, and that was unfortunate.
Right.
But I mean,
dude, just that sentence is so horrific. We killed a bunch of Japanese, and that was unfortunate. It is unfortunate when you drop atomic bombs and you totally don't need to, because Japan had essentially surrendered and in back channels had said they want to surrender. The only point that was a sticking point is they said, can we just keep our emperor as a symbolic figurehead? That's the only thing that they wanted because they viewed him as like a god. And so we could have, it was over. There was no reason to drop the atomic bombs. But here's Bill Maher after hundreds of thousands were killed. And in Nagasaki, the number of actual quote unquote military targets out of the 100,000 that were killed was like 200 people or less. It was like 0 military targets in Nagasaki and very few in Hiroshima either. But this is Bill Maher. Hundreds of thousands of people murdered by U.S. war machine when they didn't need to be. Germany had long surrendered, so that's over. And here he is going, that's kind of unfortunate. I'm going to sit here and smoke my cigar. That's unfortunate.
If you do kill enough lunatics, and Japan was led by lunatics,
Right.
Died of the last person and a lot of suicide bombing and all that.
Even if you want to give him the benefit of the doubt that they were led by lunatics, that's still the leaders. You're talking about murdering 100,000 innocent people. They didn't even bomb the leaders. They bombed cities that had no leaders in them. Like, what a lunatic.
Very similar to what we see with radical Muslims.
Right.
Suicide bombing, cult of martyrdom.
Right.
Okay.
So he loves to point to suicide bombing as if this is uniquely horrific or whatever. And it is horrific. Suicide bombing is horrific. But you know what else is? Our bombs we drop on children that murder people. The bombs Israel's dropping. You're telling me there's any change, any difference in how disgusting it is to obliterate children and women and innocent people left and right as to whether you drop a bomb from the sky or whether it's a guy walking in with it strapped to his vest? There is no difference. There is no difference. And there is honestly very little difference between a suicide bomber and when U.S. troops are sent in somewhere that's very dangerous that they know a lot of them are going to die. Essentially, it's the same. And there was a lot of that in Vietnam, wasn't there? A lot of U.S. troops going, we got to go up this hill, and a lot of us are not coming back. And what's the difference between that and a suicide? This absolute bullshit idea. Oh no, suicide bombing is uniquely radical, uniquely horrific, uniquely terroristic. But us dropping an endless number of bombs, killing 6 million people in the global war on terror in 20 years. 6 million people. The estimates are 4.5 million to 6 million people, according to the Brown University cost of war. So, which is uniquely horrific? The 6 million that the U.S. has killed, or the 25 that are killed by a terrorist bomber, by a suicide bomber?
Okay. So Japan became our good friend. So let's not pretend that you can't actually get to the root of this. It is difficult.
I'm not pretending.
No.
I truly believe in
you
this
will not,
particular case.
You will not.
You don't think that all those people that are now homeless and their families are destroyed, you don't think that they are now
I think you have
Hamas
to make calculation.
again?
Of course. Absolutely.
So Henry Winkler just makes a very important point, which is when you are killing all of these people, do you not think that the family members that survive join Hamas or become more radicalized or say, yeah, I've lost my family. I'm willing to die for this cause. Of course, a lot of them do. Of course. And they're living in an open air prison and they're occupied. And of course, a lot of them do. So, and then Bill Maher just agreed. He said, yeah, I believe that. So there you go. Bombing them does not take away the ideas that led to October 7th.
That is going to happen. You are also
So
recruiting.
you want to kill every human being?
No. Is that what I said?
No, but I think it is what you were leading to.
No, it is certainly not what I'm leading to. What I'm saying
If we kill enough of them, we're going to end Hamas.
I didn't say that either.
That absolutely is what Bill Maher just said. He said, what's going on there is fine because it's designed to kill an idea. And the idea, the thought that you can't kill an idea is wrong. So therefore, kill as many as you need to kill the idea. And it seemed to be leading to just kill them all.
I think you did.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
You said it.
You want to play it back?
Yeah, I
I didn't say that.
I didn't say
I
that.
did not say if you kill enough of them, where the Hamas is
No,
over.
what I said was the idea that you can't kill an idea.
Oh, that's what I said.
Yeah, that's what I was objecting to.
Right.
And I was quoting Sam talking about the fact that
You
after
know, World War II, we did not kill
uh,
Nazism.
Yeah, we did.
Except for like a moment.
But,
It's back almost in every country.
Back in a tiny fringe.
Oh.
I mean,
So now he's just talking about whether they have power or not, whether the ideas are in the seat of government or not. That is different than whether the ideas exist. Like Henry Winkler is absolutely right. We didn't kill Nazism. It is certainly around. In fact, the U.S. is partnering with it in Ukraine right now. We got good buddies that are Nazis. Operation Paperclip. I know Henry Winkler's actually wrong. He said we killed it for a minute. No, we didn't kill Nazism for a minute. We took out the power structure that it had, meaning it had a military, it had a government, it had a leadership in Germany. That was taken out. But in terms of people with those ideas, no, of course they still existed. And in Operation Paperclip, the CIA and the U.S. government brought a lot of them over here to work for us, which didn't mean they stopped believing those things. Anyway, I have this is probably the third or fourth segment I've done on Bill Maher's pro-genocide garbage, and I just can't. He's such a terrible human being, and yet gets to run around claiming to be liberal, which a lot of people think means left-wing. It does not, but a lot of people think it does. And so a lot of people go, oh, Bill Maher is a left-winger. And no, not at all. He could be tomorrow. He could be on Fox News. All right, let's see what a couple of you guys are saying, and then I'm going to do a special segment for those of you on locals over at leecamp.net. And by the way, for those of you who sign up on Patreon, patreon.com/leecamp, you're not going to get the extra segment live because I don't have a way to do that, but you will get the extra segment in a few days once I have time to edit it. So you can also sign up at patreon.com/leecamp and support this show. Falsificationism says, it seems like Winkler is a nice, humble, polite dude. So happy my idea about him isn't shattered. Pretty ignorant about the issue, but he's still calling Maher out. Yeah, he's doing it. It sounds like Winkler's doing his best, even though he's not fully able to argue with Maher. But Hobo Rody says, when you got paperclip to America, you got to keep the medals that Hitler gave you. Growing up in Livermore, where the bomb comes from, I knew two blokes with iron crosses. Yeah, totally. They brought, I've done segments for my podcast, Government Secrets, on Operation Paperclip. They knew they were bringing, some of them were high level Nazis over here to work on in our sciences and to work as CIA spies, etc. You Can't Handle the Truth says, U.S. loves to arm lunatics. That's how they do imperialism. Yeah, it does seem that way, doesn't it? Mick Norton says Lee Camp and Hedges and Wolf, Richard Wolf and Cornell are the only true left pundits left. You're too kind, Mick. Thank you. And thank you for putting me in an awesome group of humans. Huckleberry Ninja asks, do you think the coming collapse of the dollar will have an effect on the election? I don't think the collapse of the dollar will happen before the election. I do think the dollar will keep waning, but that could take years and years. Stolen TBS report says Maher has a one-trick pony. It's starting to show. I hope people start to see through his garbage. You Can't Handle the Truth says Americans must have some secret immunity to over 250 plus banned substances in their food and drinks when most parts of the world ban it. No, I don't think we have immunity. I think we have cancer. I don't think that's immunity. I think we got a lot of cancer. Dude, if they did like specific cancer studies on like sometimes you'll see one, but it's pretty rare, on specific areas of the country. Now, we do know about cancer alleys where you're like near an absolute shit spewing monstrosity. Okay, but I mean like certain cities, whether there's increased rate of cancer or certain jobs, like if you're the guy that lays the asphalt in the city and you spend all day breathing that in every day, like whether those people get cancer at a higher rate than average workers, like if they started studying that stuff, it would people would be not just people would be horrified, but it would like all of a sudden you'd have nobody signing up to be the construction worker. If I'm right, I don't even know that that's one. I'm just saying, but you'd have no people or working at the Teflon factory or whatever. You'd have no one signing up for those jobs. But on top of that, if certain cities, LA has all the smog issues and stuff, might be one example, but various cities, all of a sudden these cities are going to empty out. I'm not saying nobody's lived there, but we never do those studies. They never do those studies because they know that it would look terrible. It looked terrible for America. It looked terrible for certain industries. So they just don't do them. They just don't tell us, Holly Horn says Maher is unhinged. Absolutely. Sir Edward Ross says Alan Dulles was a Nazi. I think that could very well be true. Or at least he was Nazi adjacent. He was Nazi-ish. William Charles has Henry Winkler as a functional moral compass. Cat Negrita says locals is where the cool kids hang. Thank you, Cat. And that gives me a good segue to say I am headed over to do a special segment right now, special comedy segment at leecamp.net, my locals page. And for all of you who are new to my show, I do this 4 times a week. I should have said, before I said that, go to leecamp.net if you want to see that extra segment and scroll down to become a subscriber. And you then click on the live stream and I will be doing that extra segment. But I do these live streams 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. I am heavily censored, so it's suppressed. So just show up. Don't wait for alerts. Just be here. And tomorrow I will have Eleanor Goldfield on as well with me. So see you tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. Unless you're at locals, if you're on locals right now, hang in there and I'll be with you in just a second. Okay. So see you in 1 second, locals.